Hi, everybody. This is Jetty, your friendly neighborhood urban herbalist, and I'd like to talk today about a plant called Yarrow. This was a plant that, a few years into my herbal training, kind of knocked on the door for me. It wasn't one that I particularly was interested in, consciously at least. It was one that kept showing up, and eventually I started to pay attention to it and had some kind of remarkable experiences of the kind full of synchronicity, kind of hard to convey the magic of. Um, and it has become for me one of the most key herbs in my own practice of working with plants, and then of course, and then also in my clinical practice of giving plants to other people. Um, since an herbalist's job is essentially like a matchmaker between the plants and the people that you're working with, you have to have relationships with those plants just like you do with the people. And the deeper the relationship with the plant goes, the more you can understand of its medicine and the more you can see when it's indicated. And once I got to know Yarrow well, started to get to know it well, I just started giving it everywhere. I was like, everybody can use this medicine. It's one of these, there's a word for that in herbalism called a polycrest, for remedies that are so broadly applicable. And Yarrow is often considered that. Um, where to start with this plant? So its Latin name is Achillea millefolium, named after Achilles. So right away it takes us back to the world of Greek myth and this warrior who was also trained as a healer by, if I'm not mixing up my mythology here, the centaur Chiron. So the archetype of healing and wounds, and the wounded healer, as author Matthew Wood talks about, this is the herb of the wounded healer. One of the first times I was working with it, the first time I sort of met this plant consciously, out of nowhere I had a blister on my heel and I was limping around, and then we were sitting with Yarrow, and it was almost like the plant was joking with me and saying, "Look, a wounded healer, you got to walk the wounded healer walk." So it's a plant that can help us walk that walk, which involves a fair amount of limping along the way. There's so many aspects to this plant. Its medicine runs really, really deep. It runs in the blood. It's a plant that acts deeply on the blood. It can it can help prevent hemorrhaging. For example, heavy menstrual flow that's like hemorrhagic in its intensity. It can staunch that. It's good for wounds, hence the name. It's also called soldier's wound wort. It's one of its historical names. So packed into wounds on the battlefield where you've got a serious hemorrhage, it does that on the other side of things. And often herbs work this way, where they'll normalize things, normalize an action. If the blood is stagnant and not flowing freely, Yarrow can, what we would say in Chinese medicine, it can move the blood. But I'm particularly interested in its less physical and more subtle properties, which for me, as I've worked with it over time, I can kind of sum it up like it's a vertical alignment that it helps establish. So the first piece of that, like a tree, first it needs to be rooted and grounded. So I find that the direction of the plant is often downward. It helps to establish a foundation and get grounded. And then it helps to establish some boundaries. It's really a plant that's also known for helping to strengthen our boundaries, whether that's our immunity or our emotional boundaries. For people it's very good for people, like many people who are drawn to working with plants are, who are very sensitive and they don't necessarily have the training or the innate resources to distinguish all the stuff that's coming in, kind of porous to the universe, which is a beautiful thing, to be receptive, but it can be too much to handle. And we have to learn as healers to know when to say, no, that's not coming in. Like this is out, this is in. I have a skin and I have layers to me. And Yarrow, when I first tasted it, I got this very distinct, profound impression of like a screen all around me. It was kind of like a high-tech screen that had the capacity to filter out different things depending on what was needed. So Yarrow helps to strengthen boundaries and can even push things that are already kind of transgressed, we've already let them in, can help push those out. On the physical level, that can be like promoting sweating when we have a flu, pushing things out of our boundary. So first, grounding and rooting, and from there, boundaries. And from there, only once we have that safe container, it can really help us open up along the vertical axis to whatever you want to call it, the spirit world, the archetypal realm, the land, wherever the higher self or some other intuitive intelligence hangs out. It can help us open to that in a way that's contained and safe and grounded, and that actually helps to bring in whatever we're ready to put into practice. So the direction is like input from that realm of inspiration down into a firm container and down through our feet so we can walk our walk in the world. So it's really a transformative plant. It has been for me as I continue to walk and limp and stumble and dance along this path. And I highly recommend getting to know this plant if you have any draw to the healing arts. An interesting fact about Yarrow is that it's historically the plant that's been used to consult the I Ching, or the Yi Jing, which is the Chinese book of changes, essentially an oracle that's been consulted in China for thousands upon thousands of years. It's one of the very oldest books in existence, older than the Bible, certainly. And the I Ching, although people often will flip coins to consult it these days, or God forbid use a smartphone app, originally was consulted with a bundle of Yarrow stalks. So stalks from Yarrow, you'd need 50 of them, and you set one aside, and then you go through a process that takes about 10 or 15 minutes of manipulating the rest of the stalks until you've generated one of the hexagrams, the symbols of the I Ching. So the I Ching was used as an oracle to help do exactly what I was talking about with Yarrow, which is to connect along that vertical axis. So I don't think it's coincidental that that was the plant that was used. It really has this ability to help us connect. In fact, that ability is even encoded in the name of Yarrow, that word Yarrow. This only struck me late in the game, but that word can break up into the letter Y and arrow. So you've got Y as in like the Y-axis on a mathematical graph, the vertical line, and an arrow, so pointing you along the vertical line, or in this case, pointing down from above, down to the earth. And then also a further pun on that, and plants definitely have a sense of humor, I'm finding, that Y, the letter Y, can also be the word Y, W-H-Y, as in, what is your why? What is your reason? Why are you here? What is your purpose? Yarrow, just like the I Ching, is I don't want to say a tool, more like a teacher for helping us to tune in to what we're here to do. And I think that's a question that everybody has to find their own answer to. So a plant that can help us tune into our own personal destiny. And I don't think that sounds like a tall order for a humble little herb, but you'd be surprised of what can start to happen if you take this regularly and respect it and work with it, sit with it. Above all, listen to it and pay attention to the things that it's showing you, and start to step into embody those lessons, and then shed what you don't need to hold on to and come into alignment. It's I'm still working on it myself, so very much I'm sure I will be for the rest of this life. But it's been a good ride so far, and I recommend Yarrow as a guide.